Dramily.com, unlimited drama series.
Marriage is supposed to be a partnership. Ours was more like a hostile merger, with terrible Wi-Fi and even worse customer service. I'm Nate Forrester, 43 years old, IT security specialist for a mid-sized firm in downtown Chicago. I've spent the last 15 years of my life debugging other people's problems, but apparently I missed the biggest virus of all, the one eating away at my own home. My wife Harper thinks I don't notice things. That's her first mistake. When you spend your days hunting for digital breadcrumbs left by corporate spies and hackers, you develop a certain sensitivity to patterns. And Harper's patterns had been shifting for months. "We'll have plenty of time together, but I rarely see my friends," she said last Tuesday, not looking up from her phone as she spoke. Harper Forrester, 41, high-powered advertising executive, with the kind of smile that could sell ice to penguins, and twice the ambition. She was scrolling through what looked like a group chat, her manicured fingers dancing across the screen with practiced efficiency. "Sure," I replied, spooning cereal into my mouth while watching her reflection in the kitchen window. "When's the last time we actually spent time together anyway?" She finally glanced up, those green eyes that once made my heart skip, now carrying the warmth of a corporate boardroom. "Don't be dramatic, Nate. I'm planning something special for all of us. A trip to that lake house rental I found." Our kids were already at the breakfast table. Emma, 17, sharp as her mother, but with my sense of humor, rolled her eyes. "Let me guess, another family bonding experience, where mom spends the whole time on conference calls." Owen, 13 and blessed with the kind of sarcasm that would make a comedian weep with pride, didn't even look up from his gaming device. "At least the Wi-Fi better not stink this time." Harper's smile tightened. "This will be different. I'm inviting Trina and Blair to join us, and maybe Josh from work. He's been so stressed lately." Josh Vance, 37 years old, Harper's business partner, and the kind of guy who wore his trust fund like a designer cologne, drove a silver Porsche, and had the sort of confidence that came from never having to worry about paying bills. I'd met him at a few company parties, where he'd managed to make small talk feel like a personal insult. "Josh needs a vacation?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Rough life, managing other people's money." "He's brilliant at what he does," Harper said, her tone carrying a defensive edge I'd been hearing more often lately. "The campaign he designed for Morrison Industries brought in $12 million in new business." Emma caught my eye and made a subtle gagging motion. At least one person in this family still had my back. After Harper left for work that morning, I did what any reasonable IT professional would do. I started paying attention to the digital footprints she was leaving around the house. Not hacking, exactly. More like observing. Her laptop stayed logged into the family cloud account. Her phone connected to our home Wi-Fi, which I managed. And she had a habit of leaving browser tabs open. What I found made my coffee taste like ash. A group chat called Girls Weekend Planning with Trina Mitchell and Blair Stevens, Harper's two closest friends, and the kind of women who treated gossip like an Olympic sport. The conversation history was enlightening. Trina: "He's such a bore. Harper deserves more excitement." Blair: "Josh is wild in bed, from what I hear. Lucky girl." Harper: "It's complicated. Nate's so predictable. Josh makes me feel alive again." Trina: "When are you going to make the move? This sneaking around is getting old." Harper: "Soon. The lake house trip is perfect. We can spend time together without raising suspicions." I stared at the screen, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Not heartbreak. That would come later. This was something else. Recognition, maybe. The same feeling I got when I found a security breach in a client's system, the moment when all the scattered pieces suddenly formed a picture. My wife was having an affair with Josh Vance, and she was planning to flaunt it in front of our children. I screenshotted everything and saved it to an encrypted folder on my personal drive. Then I sat back in my desk chair and started thinking. Harper had always underestimated me, treated me like I was just another piece of furniture in her carefully curated life. The reliable husband who fixed the router and paid the bills while she pursued her dreams of corporate domination. She was about to learn that furniture can be rearranged. The lake house she'd rented was in Michigan, about 3 hours north of Chicago. Luxury accommodations with a private beach, according to the booking confirmation I found in her email. She'd reserved it for a long weekend, Thursday through Sunday. Plenty of time for her and Josh to play house, while I presumably sat in the corner like a good little husband. That evening, Harper came home with takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant, a peace offering that might have worked 6 months ago. Now it just felt like another manipulation. I thought we could have a nice dinner together, she said, unpacking containers of pad thai and green curry. Just the family. Where are the kids? I asked. Emma's at soccer practice. Owen's at that coding camp until 8. It's just us for a couple hours. She moved around the kitchen with practiced efficiency, her blonde hair catching the light from our pendant lamps. Harper had always been beautiful, the kind of woman who turned heads at restaurants and made other wives feel inadequate at school events. Tonight, watching her serve dinner while mentally planning her affair, she just looked like a stranger wearing my wife's face. Tell me about this lake house, I said, settling into my usual chair at the dining table. Harper's eyes lit up with genuine enthusiasm, the first real emotion I'd seen from her in weeks. It's perfect, Nate. Right on the water. Huge deck, fire pit for evening gatherings. The kids will love it. And your friends are coming? Just Trina and Blair. And Josh? He's going through a rough patch with his marriage. I thought some time away would do him good. Josh was married to a woman named Patricia, a surgeon who worked 60-hour weeks and probably had no idea her husband was planning a romantic getaway with his business partner. I made a mental note to look her up later. Sounds expensive, I said. Harper waved a hand dismissively. The agency's doing well. We can afford to splurge a little. What she meant was that her agency was doing well, thanks largely to Josh's connections and my wife's willingness to work 18-hour days. What she didn't know was that I'd been quietly documenting our family finances for months, ever since I'd noticed some unusual spending patterns in our joint accounts. Late-night dinners at expensive restaurants when she claimed to be working. Hotel charges in downtown Chicago when her office was in the suburbs. A jewelry purchase for $800 that had never appeared in her jewelry box at home. I'd been building a case without even realizing it. After dinner, Harper retreated to her home office to catch up on some projects. I could hear her voice through the door, low and intimate in a way she hadn't spoken to me in months. When Emma and Owen came home, we settled into our usual evening routine: homework supervision, gaming time negotiations, and the kind of comfortable chaos that made me remember why I'd wanted a family in the first place. Dad, Emma said as I tucked her into bed, a ritual she'd probably outgrow soon, but hadn't quite abandoned yet. Is everything okay with you and Mom? Smart kid. Too smart, sometimes. Why do you ask? She's been different lately, more distracted, and you've been quiet. I smoothed her dark hair back from her forehead, buying time to think. Emma had my coloring and Harper's intelligence, a combination that was going to cause me trouble in a few years when boys started calling. Sometimes grown-ups go through difficult periods, I said finally. But whatever happens, you and Owen are the most important things in the world to me. Remember that. She nodded solemnly, those brown eyes too knowing for 17. I love you, Dad. Love you too, kiddo. Owen was easier. He just wanted to know if he could bring his gaming setup to the lake house and whether the internet connection would support his online tournaments. I promised to check the rental's tech specs and left him arranging virtual battles with friends across 3 time zones. That night, while Harper slept beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling and planning. Not revenge, exactly. That would come later. This was more like debugging, identifying the problem, understanding its scope, and developing a systematic approach to fix it. Harper wanted to humiliate me at the lake house, to parade her affair in front of our friends and children, while I played the role of the oblivious husband. She thought I was predictable, boring, the kind of man who would just accept whatever she decided to do. She was about to discover that predictable didn't mean powerless. I always thought I was just the IT guy in this relationship. Turns out, I was about to become the system administrator, and I was planning a complete reboot. The lake house looked like something from a luxury magazine, all glass and cedar, perched on a bluff overlooking Lake Michigan, with the kind of view that probably cost more per night than most people made in a week. Harper had outdone herself. I'd give her that. If you were going to destroy a marriage, You might as well do it somewhere with good Wi-Fi and a hot tub. This is incredible, Trina Mitchell gushed as she climbed out of her white BMW SUV. 42 years old, recently divorced, and blessed with the kind of enthusiasm that made everything sound like a wine commercial. Harper, you've really found paradise. Blair Stevens emerged from the passenger seat like she was walking a red carpet. 39, married to a plastic surgeon, and the kind of woman who treated other people's secrets like currency. She was already taking selfies with the lake in the background. The lighting here is perfect, Blair announced. This is going to make everyone back home so jealous. Josh pulled up in his silver Porsche, just as we were unloading bags from my sensible Honda Pilot. He unfolded himself from the driver's seat with the kind of casual grace that came from a lifetime of expensive everything. Clothes, cars, vacations, probably even his morning coffee. "Nate," he called out, flashing that $1,000,000 smile. "Great to see you, buddy. Thanks for sharing Harper with us workaholics this weekend." "Buddy, right." I shook his offered hand, noting the firm grip and the watch that probably cost more than my car. "No problem, Josh. We're all about sharing in the Forrester family." Harper shot me a sharp look, but Josh just laughed. "That's the spirit. Work-life balance, right? Sometimes you need good friends to remind you what's important." Emma and Owen were already exploring the house, their voices echoing from the multiple levels and rooms. The place was massive. 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a kitchen that belonged in a cooking show, and enough deck space to host a small concert. Harper had booked it for 4 nights, Thursday through Sunday, plenty of time for whatever she had planned. The caretaker left a welcome basket, Harper announced, reading from a note she'd found on the granite kitchen counter. "Local wine, cheese, some homemade bread, and there's a contact number if we need anything." The caretaker turned out to be a weathered man named Mr. Webb, who appeared around sunset to check that we'd settled in properly. He had the kind of eyes that noticed everything and the discretion to keep most of it to himself. "Beautiful place you've got here," I told him as he tested the hot tub controls. "Been managing this property for 3 years now," he replied, his voice carrying the flat vowels of rural Michigan. "Seen all kinds of groups come through. Some leave it better than they found it. Others," he shrugged. "Which kind do you think we are?" Mr. Webb studied me for a moment, then glanced toward the deck where Harper and Josh were sharing a bottle of wine while Trina and Blair gossiped nearby. "Too early to tell, but I'd say you're the type who pays attention." After he left, we settled into the kind of forced family fun that happens when you put 7 people in close quarters and pretend everyone's thrilled about it. Harper had planned activities, hiking, swimming, a bonfire on the beach. What she'd really planned was opportunities for her and Josh to disappear together while I played babysitter to everyone else. Dinner was an exercise in watching my wife flirt with another man while our children sat 10 feet away. Nothing obvious, Harper was too smart for that. Just lingering glances, shared jokes, the kind of intimate body language that screamed, "We're together," to anyone paying attention. "Josh, tell Nate about that Morrison Industries campaign," Harper said, her hand briefly touching his arm as she reached for the wine bottle. The creative approach was so innovative. Josh launched into a detailed explanation of market demographics and brand positioning, while I nodded and made appropriate sounds. Emma caught my eye and made a subtle face that suggested she found Josh about as interesting as I did. Owen was absorbed in his phone, probably texting friends about how boring adult conversations were. "The key is understanding what motivates people," Josh was saying. "What they really want, underneath all the surface-level stuff. Once you figure that out, you can give them exactly what they need." "Native. Fascinating," I said. "And what do you think motivates most people?" Josh leaned back in his chair, wine making him philosophical. "Recognition, validation, the feeling that they matter to someone." His eyes drifted to Harper. "Everyone wants to feel special." After dinner, while the others gathered around the fire pit, I excused myself to check work emails and spent some quality time with the house's Wi-Fi network. The rental company had provided guest access, but like most people, they'd left the administrative settings wide open for anyone who knew where to look. Within 20 minutes, I had complete access to the network traffic, which meant I could monitor every device connected to it: Harper's phone, Josh's laptop, even Trina and Blair's social media activity. Not illegal. I wasn't accessing their accounts, just observing the data flow through a network I was legitimately connected to. What I found was enlightening. Harper and Josh had been texting constantly, even while sitting next to each other at dinner. Private messages full of innuendo and planning. references to later tonight and when everyone's asleep. They'd been carrying on this affair for at least 3 months, based on the message history I could glimpse. But more interesting were the group chats. Trina and Blair had been gossiping about Harper's situation for weeks, treating my marriage like their personal soap opera. They knew about the affair, encouraged it, and were apparently here to provide cover while Harper and Josh played house. I screenshotted everything I could access legally and saved it to my encrypted drive. Then I started planning. The house's smart home system was impressive. Automated lighting, climate control, security cameras, even app-controlled appliances. All of it connected to the same network I now had administrative access to. The previous renters had apparently been tech-savvy enough
Your ex, the one you said you blocked, 300 messages this month.
He contacted me for
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
to customize some of the settings, leaving behind a few interesting possibilities. Around midnight, after everyone had supposedly gone to bed, I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my room. Soft voices, muffled laughter, the sound of a door closing very quietly. Harper had slipped out to meet Josh, probably in one of the guest rooms on the opposite end of the house from where the kids were sleeping. I gave them 20 minutes to get comfortable, then activated my first little surprise. The house's fire alarm system was connected to the smart home network, designed to alert the monitoring company and local fire department in case of emergency. But it also had a test mode that would trigger all the alarms without actually calling for help, useful for checking that the system worked properly. At 12:47 a.m., every smoke detector in the house started shrieking. I was already dressed and in the hallway by the time the others started stumbling out of their rooms, looking confused and panicked. Emma and Owen appeared from their rooms, wide-eyed but alert. Trina and Blair emerged from the main guest suite, clutching robes and looking annoyed. Harper and Josh took considerably longer to appear, and when they did, they came from opposite ends of the house, a detail I made sure to note out loud. "Strange," I said, as Josh appeared from the direction of the downstairs guest room, while Harper emerged from the upstairs bathroom. "I thought everyone was sleeping in their assigned rooms." "Well, I couldn't sleep," Harper said quickly. "I was getting some water, and I was on the deck," Josh added. "Thought I smelled smoke, actually." The alarm system reset itself after exactly 60 seconds, another feature I'd discovered in the settings. We spent the next half hour checking the house for any signs of fire, finding nothing, and listening to Harper theorize about faulty wiring or dust in the sensors. "These old systems can be temperamental," she said, playing the role of concerned hostess. "I'll call the caretaker in the morning." "Good idea," I agreed. "We want everyone to feel safe and comfortable here." Josh avoided eye contact with me for the rest of the night. The next morning brought new entertainment. I'd spent some time the previous evening getting familiar with Josh's Porsche, which he'd parked in the driveway like a silver monument to his success. Beautiful car, really. The kind of precision engineering that responded very predictably to certain types of interference. Josh discovered the problem when he tried to leave for his morning coffee run to the nearby town. The engine turned over but wouldn't start, making the kind of frustrated whining sound that every car owner dreads. "That's weird," he said, popping the hood and staring at the engine like it might explain itself. "She was running fine yesterday." I wandered over to offer assistance, bringing my practical knowledge of troubleshooting complex systems. "It could be the fuel pump," I suggested. "Or maybe something with the ignition system. These high-performance cars can be sensitive." What it actually was a small device I'd attached to the fuel line. Nothing permanent or damaging, just something that would prevent fuel from reaching the engine until removed. The kind of thing that would look like a manufacturing defect to most mechanics. "I can call a tow truck," I offered helpfully, "though it might take a while to get someone out here on a Friday morning." Josh's jaw tightened. The Porsche wasn't just transportation for him. It was identity, status, proof that he was winning at life. Being stranded with a broken-down car in front of everyone was exactly the kind of humiliation that would get under his skin. "Let me try calling Patricia," he said. "Maybe she can recommend someone." Patricia, his wife, the surgeon, who thought he was at a work retreat. I wondered how he'd explain needing roadside assistance at a lake house 3 hours from home. While Josh dealt with his automotive crisis, I spent some quality time with Emma and Owen, teaching them to fish from the private dock and listening to their thoughts about our house guests. "Blair talks too much," Owen observed, casting his line toward a promising-looking spot near some fallen logs. "And she's always taking pictures of everything." Some people document their experiences, I said diplomatically. And Josh is weird around Mom, Emma added. Like, he's always finding excuses to stand close to her or touch her arm when he's talking. It's gross. Smart kids. Too smart. What do you think we should do about it? I asked. Emma considered this seriously. Make him uncomfortable. Show him we're paying attention. And maybe mess with his stuff, Owen suggested with a kind of creative malice that made me proud. Nothing mean, just annoying. Interesting ideas, I said, hypothetically speaking. By afternoon, Josh's car situation had become a group project. The tow truck wouldn't arrive until evening, and the nearest Porsche dealer was 2 hours away. He was stranded until at least Saturday, dependent on the rest of us for transportation and looking increasingly frustrated with each passing hour. Harper was trying to be supportive, but I could see the tension building. This wasn't how she'd planned the weekend to go. Josh was supposed to be the confident, successful man who swept her off her feet, not the guy whose expensive car broke down at the worst possible moment. These things happen, she kept saying. It's just a car. Just a car. Josh looked like she'd suggested his Rolex was just a timepiece. That evening, as we gathered around the fire pit again, I decided to share some interesting information I'd discovered during my afternoon of helping Josh research his car problems. You know, I said, settling into my chair with a beer. I was reading about Porsche reliability issues online. Apparently, there's a known problem with fuel system contamination in certain models. Usually happens when someone puts the wrong type of additive in the tank. Josh's head snapped up. What kind of additive? Oh, various things. Sometimes it's innocent, wrong octane booster, cheap fuel injector cleaner. Sometimes it's more deliberate. I took a sip of beer. Amazing how a little bit of the wrong substance can completely disable a complex machine. The silence around the fire pit was thick enough to cut with a knife. Josh stared at me, his face cycling through confusion, suspicion, and something that might have been fear. Are you suggesting someone sabotaged my car? He asked carefully. I shrugged. Just sharing what I read. Though I suppose if someone wanted to strand you here, it would be a pretty effective method. Temporary, reversible, hard to prove. The kind of thing someone with technical knowledge might think of. Harper was looking between us like she was watching a tennis match. Trina and Blair had gone very quiet, their gossip instincts picking up on the undercurrent of tension. That's a pretty serious accusation, Harper said finally. Is it an accusation? I asked mildly. I thought it was just conversation. Though I suppose if someone had a reason to want Josh stuck here, unable to leave, I let the sentence hang. Josh stood up abruptly. I think I'm going to turn in early. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. After he disappeared into the house, Harper turned to me with fire in her eyes. What the hell was that about? Just making conversation, I said, sharing interesting facts about automotive systems. I thought Josh would appreciate the technical details, being such a successful businessman and all. You're acting strange, Nate, paranoid. Am I, or am I just paying attention for the first time in months? She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to figure out how much I knew, how much I suspected. The smart move would have been to back down, to play the confused husband who was just having a bad weekend. Instead, I smiled and finished my beer. Should be an interesting rest of the weekend, I said. Don't you think? Saturday morning brought rain, and the kind of forced indoor togetherness that reveals everyone's true character. Josh's Porsche was still broken. The tow truck had been delayed until Sunday, and the group dynamics were starting to fracture along predictable lines. I found Harper in the kitchen at 6 a.m., already dressed and aggressively making coffee like she was punishing the machine for existing. Sleep well? I asked, noting the dark circles under her eyes and the tension in her shoulders. Fine, she said without looking at me. You, like a baby. Amazing how comfortable you can be when you're exactly where you belong. She shot me a sharp look. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing deep, just that it's nice to be here with family. I poured myself coffee and settled at the breakfast bar. Speaking of which, where did you disappear to last night? I woke up around 2, and you weren't in bed. Harper's hand tightened on her mug. I couldn't sleep. I went for a walk on the deck. In the rain? It wasn't raining at 2. Actually, it had been. I'd checked the weather data as part of my ongoing documentation project. But I just nodded and sipped my coffee, letting her sit with the lie. Josh appeared around 7, looking haggard and avoiding eye contact. His usual confidence had been replaced by something edgier, more defensive. The car situation had really gotten to him, but I suspected there was more to it than automotive pride. "Any word on the tow truck?" I asked pleasantly. "They'll be here by noon," he said, pouring coffee with the kind of careful precision that suggested he was working hard to appear normal. "Should have this sorted out soon." "That's great news. Though I have to say, it's been nice having everyone stuck here together. Really gives you a chance to observe people's true personalities." Josh's jaw tightened. "What do you mean by that?" "Nothing complicated. Just that people act differently when they can't run away from situations. More authentic, you know?" Emma wandered into the kitchen wearing pajama pants and one of my old college sweatshirts, her hair sticking up in directions that defied physics. "Morning, Dad." "Morning, Josh." Her tone was polite but cool. She'd clearly picked up on the tension. "Morning, sweetheart," I said. "Sleep okay?" "The walls are thin in this place," she said, giving Josh a meaningful look. "You can hear everything. People walking around, doors opening and closing, conversations." She trailed off and started making toast, but the message was clear. Smart kid, very smart kid. By the time everyone was awake and gathered for breakfast, the atmosphere had shifted from forced cheerfulness to barely concealed hostility. Trina and Blair were whispering in corners, Harper was snapping at everyone, and Josh looked like he wanted to hitchhike back to Chicago. "I think we should do something fun together," Harper announced, with the kind of aggressive enthusiasm that fooled no one. "Maybe drive into town, do some shopping, have lunch somewhere nice." "Great idea," I said. "Though we'll have to take 2 cars, since Josh's is still broken. I can drive the kids in the Honda, and you can take your friends in the BMW. Harper's smile faltered. "Actually, I thought we could all squeeze into one car, more social that way. 7 people in a 5-seat SUV? That seems unsafe. Plus, Emma gets carsick in the back seat." This was a complete fabrication, but Emma nodded solemnly in agreement. "I do," she confirmed. "Terrible motion sickness. Really ruins everyone's day when I throw up in enclosed spaces." Josh finally spoke up. "Maybe I should just stay here, work on some calls while you all have fun." "Nonsense," I said. "You're part of the group. We wouldn't want to leave you behind." I turned to Harper. "You'd hate to abandon Josh here all alone, wouldn't you, honey?" The look she gave me could have melted steel, but she managed to keep her voice level. "Of course not. Josh is our guest." We ended up taking both cars, with the seating arrangements carefully managed to keep Harper and Josh separated. I drove Emma, Owen, and Blair in the Honda, while Harper took Trina and Josh in the BMW. The kids provided running commentary on our passengers during the 20-minute drive to the nearest town. "Blair's been taking pictures of herself all morning," Owen reported from the back seat. "Like, the same pose in different locations. It's weird." "She's documenting her vacation," I said diplomatically. "And she keeps asking questions about you and Mom," Emma added. "Like, really personal stuff about your relationship and whether you guys are happy." "What did you tell her?" "That it's none of her business," Emma said firmly. "But she's definitely fishing for gossip." The town was one of those carefully preserved lakeside communities that catered to wealthy tourists, boutique shops, artisanal restaurants, and the kind of prices that made you grateful for your suburban grocery store. We split up to explore, with Harper and Josh making a show of shopping separately, while still managing to end up in the same stores at the same times. I spent the morning with the kids, buying them overpriced t-shirts, and listening to Emma's increasingly sophisticated analysis of adult behavior. "Mom's acting really weird," she said as we browsed a bookstore. "Like, fake happy but actually stressed. And Josh keeps looking at his phone every 5 minutes. People handle vacation differently," I said. But privately I was thinking the same thing. Harper was wound tight as a spring, and Josh seemed increasingly desperate to escape the situation he'd helped create. Around noon, as we were regrouping for lunch, Josh's phone rang. He answered it with obvious relief, stepping away from our group to take the call privately. When he came back, his expression had changed from anxious to panicked. "That was Patricia," he announced. "She's been trying to reach me. There's some kind of emergency at home." Harper's face went pale. "What kind of emergency?" She didn't say. "Just that I need to come home immediately." Josh looked around the group with what appeared to be genuine distress. "I hate to cut the weekend short, but..." "Of course," Harper said quickly. "Family comes first. We can drive you back to Chicago right now." "Actually," I interjected, "the tow truck should be here soon." Why don't we wait for that? Josh can drive himself home, and the rest of us can continue with our vacation as planned. Josh's panic intensified. I really can't wait. Patricia sounded, it was serious. Then let's call the tow truck and see if they can meet us in town, I suggested helpfully. Save everyone a 6-hour round trip. What followed was 20 minutes of Josh making increasingly frantic phone calls, while Harper tried to convince me that we should just drive him home immediately. The tow truck couldn't change locations. The nearest car rental was closed on weekends. Josh's other friends were all mysteriously unavailable. Finally, I offered a solution. I could drive you back to Chicago, I said. Take the Honda, make it a father-son road trip with Owen. Emma can stay here with the ladies, and everyone wins. The look of absolute horror on both Harper's and Josh's faces was worth the entire weekend. They'd planned a romantic getaway, and I was systematically destroying every opportunity for them to be alone together. That's very generous, Josh said weakly. No problem at all. What are friends for? In